briefing began with White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs.
I want to discuss an issue that's very important to the President this morning, the steps we are taking on both sides of the border, working with our Mexican partners to support the Mexican government's campaign against the violent cartels and to reduce contraband in both directions across the border. Under the Merida Initiative, we're investing $700 million this year to work in collaboration with Mexico on law enforcement and judicial capacity. DHS, DOJ, and Treasury are all ramping up personnel efforts directed at the southwest border. We're renewing our commitment to reduce the demand for illegal drugs here at home. The President admires President Calderon's courage and determination to confront and dismantle the drug cartels, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with him in that fight. Mexico undoubtedly faces serious challenges, but it is vigorously confronting them. Mexico's drug-related violence is carried out among the warring cartels and against government forces. The U.S.-Mexico relationship is getting sustained, high-level, and comprehensive attention. President-elect Obama met with President Calderon in January. Chairman Mullen visited Mexico on March 5th and 6th. Secretary of State Clinton goes to Mexico tomorrow. And Secretary Napolitano and Attorney General Eric Holder visit April 1st and 2nd, all ahead of the President's visit on the way to the Summit of the Americas, April 16th and 17th. Because this effort has so many facets, the U.S.-Mexico relationship and our efforts to help address the increase in violence in Mexico are being coordinated with the White House through the National Security Council and the Homeland Security Council. Today, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, Deputy Secretary of State Jim Steinberg, and U.S. Deputy Attorney General David Ogden will lay out the administration's comprehensive response to the situation along the border with Mexico, and we'll take a few questions. So let me hand it off to a return guest to the briefing room, Secretary Napolitano.
Thank you. Good morning. There are a number of issues involved, a number of actions being undertaken by DHS in conjunction with the Department of State, the Department of Justice with respect to Mexico. And I'm just going to go through a whole inventory of actions that are underway. Some we have already undertaken in the last several weeks. Others are being taken either today or in the immediate future. First, we are doubling the number of law enforcement personnel that are working in border enforcement teams along the border. These are called BEST teams. These are teams that combine state, local with ICE and CBP personnel. Every state along the border will now have BEST teams. New Mexico previously had not had one, but just to give you a sense of how effective they are, they have already made more than 2,000 criminal arrests and seized nearly 8,000 pounds of cocaine. We are also strengthening Operation Armas Cruzadas. This is our operation where we work to seize arms that are going south to be used in this violent war in Mexico. Just this past week, March 7 through 13, we seized 997 firearms in 1 week that were going into Mexico, along with $4.5 million in conjunction with those firearms. So that is underway. We are tripling the number of Department of Homeland Security intelligence analysts located on the southwest border. We are increasing the ICE, that's Immigration and Custom Enforcement, attaché personnel in Mexico by 50%. These will primarily be located in Mexico City, working alongside the Attorney General of Mexico. We will be increasing our efforts on what's called Operation Firewall. This is a Treasury-directed initiative that's designed to interdict money laundering that is going back and forth between the drug cartels in Mexico and where they get the cash, which is in the United States. We are doubling the number of agents in our violent crime alien sections along the border. This is designed to prosecute violent recidivist aliens. We're quadrupling the number of border liaison officers. This is designed to make sure these officers work between us on the border and Mexican law enforcement on the border, make sure that things are properly coordinated and go smoothly. We are bolstering technology and resources with a significant increase in our biometric identification deployment. What does that mean? What that means is the capacity of state and local law enforcement on the border to run fingerprints on people they've apprehended that are in the jails and so forth, to make sure they've been run through the ICE databases, among other things, to identify whether they are criminal aliens. We are embarking on increased screening of rail that goes south from the United States into Mexico. There are, in reality, only 8 rail lines that actually transverse that border. So we are working to have 100% screening on those rail crossings into Mexico. We are moving mobile X-ray units to the border. These will be used to help identify anomalies in passenger vehicles. Well, what does that mean? That means we're trying to identify vehicles that are carrying arms into Mexico that are being used in the drug war in Mexico. We are moving today 100 more CBP personnel to the border to do outbound inspections. We are moving 12 teams of cross-trained dogs. They can be used to detect both weapons and currency to the southwest border. We are moving 3 mobile response teams of Border Patrol agents to deploy to the border, and we're increasing the number of license plate readers to look for the plates of suspected smugglers. They will be deployed again to the outgoing lanes at ports of entry. In terms of grant funding, Operation Stone Garden, we are changing the grant guidance for our remaining balances in that grant pool. It will be immediately modified to focus $59 million to enhance current state, local, and tribal law enforcement operations and assets along the border. And we will expand the scope of Operation Stone Garden funds to pay for additional law enforcement personnel, overtime, travel, and the like for deployment of state and local tribal officials to the border. In addition, we are engaging state and local law enforcement in a way I don't think has been done previously, with regular calls and conferences with state and local law enforcement in those border areas, in those border counties, so we really get a better sense of what's happening on a real-time basis in this issue in this battle, actually, that is ongoing in Mexico. Let me just say there are a number of other actions being undertaken, and you'll hear about DOJ and Department of State here in a minute. One question I anticipate you will ask is, where are we with the National Guard? And we are still considering and looking at that. One of the things I wanted to be able to do was to meet with the governor of Texas to ask specifically what he is thinking about with respect to Guard along the Texas-Mexico border. I will see him on Thursday. I'll be in Texas to meet with him. And as you just heard, both the Attorney General and I will be in Mexico next week to consult with the Minister of the Interior there and the Attorney General about what other actions can be taken. Our goal is twofold. One is to provide assistance to the government of Mexico to break up these huge cartels, which are funneling tonnage quantities of illegal drugs into our country on a regular basis, and are conducting this war of violence within Mexico that has resulted in over 6,000 homicides, over 550 of which were assassinations of law enforcement and public official personnel. The second is to guard against an increase in violence in the United States as a result of the actions undertaken in Mexico. We've seen some increase in violence primarily between cartels themselves, kidnappings, for example, in the Phoenix area, in the Houston area. But what we want to do is to better secure the border area against further violence and make it a safe and secure area where, of course, the rule of law is upheld and enforced. So that gives you an inventory of all the things that are happening right now with respect to Homeland Security and the border in this very, very important initiative. And now I think it's your turn. Thank you.